Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kari Anderson, and I'm based in Scottsdale, Arizona in the United States. And I am a specialist in eating disorders, and I come by that through my own experience. So I have a lot of passion, especially for those women who have been struggling with diets and their bodies and weight and with food for their entire life. My story goes all the way back to when I was 8 years old. And I remember when I was 8 years old that I was turning to sugar, pure sugar. I would just take sugar cubes or packets of sugar, and I would, when I became anxious and fearful and felt alone, I would take those sugar packets and I would go into a really private place, like into the bathroom or into a closet. And I would just pour that sugar down my throat, and it would just calm everything, and everything was just okay for a little while. So that turned into some pretty powerful neural pathways for me in terms of for comfort, for my anxiety to use sugar in those ways. And so it wasn't until I began dieting in my early teen years that it turned into a full-blown eating disorder, a binge eating disorder. And at that time in the 70s, nobody knew what that was. I just thought I was one hot mess. And nobody, understood why I couldn't stay on a diet. I could lose weight, but then I would rapidly gain it. And so it was quite embarrassing because I was wearing my disorder, right? People could see what was going on with this weight cycling. And so as I went into, I was an athlete and I went into college and became in my undergraduate a dietitian and an exercise physiologist. And so I was going to, help others and beat this whole problem myself, but found myself collapsing into treatment and getting treatment for an eating disorder. And at the time, they treated eating disorder like an addiction at that time. And then I went back and got my master's and started becoming a counselor. And ever since, it's been nearly 35 years, I've been working in the treatment industry and have been helping others through my own writings and my own private practice now, and helping other women who struggle with feeling like they're out of control with food, their bodies are unruly. I've been trying to do this my whole life. And these are women that are very skilled and professional and do everything else in their life well. And this one area of their life, they feel out of control. They feel a failure. And through my own recovery and my own story and I'm so transparent and real that I share with them that there is hope, that you can kind of climb out of this hole and have a good relationship with food. But that really has to do with, I call it befriending. I use a lot of body-based techniques and befriending the body and not fighting with the body, and learning what it has to tell you about what it's needing in terms of its nervous system, in terms of its the biological aspects, the neurological aspects of the body. My doctoral degree, I studied a lot of neuroscience. I studied a lot of psychopathology, as well as physiological aspects of illness and lifestyle medicine. And so I have learned a lot about what it is, and through my own experience of what it is that if we can make the body feel safe and calm, our nervous system, we're not as likely to turn to food as a sedative. We're not as likely to turn to food for stress. It's a very good stress management tool, honestly, in terms of how our nervous system really responds to food. It calms down, it moves into its parasympathetic nervous system. It feels like it's going to make it. We're always in this survival mode, and food is life and a life force. And so it feels like, oh, okay, I'm going to be okay. And yet in terms of our own health and our own self-confidence, our clarity of mind, our energy and our body really fades away. And so our best self, by using food, our best self is not, we don't have access to that. And so I really help people to be able to understand how they can learn their own owner's manual to feed themselves and to respond to their own nervous system, to calm their nervous system down, and to apply a lot of stress management techniques in order for them to be able to manage their life, especially those very successful women that are in charge of companies and are teaching in a university setting or whatever it is. Those are the type of women that really are drawn to me. Those very highly successful women that feel such a failure in those areas around food and body. And so I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a counselor, and I come alongside women, and it's almost like taking their hand and say, here, come alongside me, I'll help you do this. And so that you then, until you can take this on your own and feel highly confident in your ability to take care of yourself. But there's a lot of women out there that just simply have a difficult time managing this area of their life. So I had a lot of, as a child, I lived in a lot of fear, in isolation, and food was my attachment. And so in my own recovery, I've learned that even though food as an attachment is very safe, it makes your life and your world very, very small. And so I help people to step into a bigger life and step out of the darkness and into the light, and to have less fear around this. Our society tries to undermine women in terms of you don't have any business making decisions about your food, right? You can't trust yourself with food. Big pharma or big food companies, diet industry will try to hijack women and say, hey, just follow what I'm doing and you'll be fine. But they find themselves cycling through these programs and never feeling completely confident in their ability to take care of themselves and their ability to trust their body, and to have their own owner's manual. What works for me, and how do I step into and manage my body as a friend? How do I collaborate with it? Our bodies are not meant to be fought, because it's the most enduring and longest relationship that we have in our life. We're born into these bodies, and they're with us till we depart. So it's like the closest relationship that we're ever going to have in our lives. And so important that we're not fighting ourselves, but we're collaborating.
Kari, you are sharing a story that is so familiar to so many women. At some point in our lives, we have all gone through this in one degree or another. And what I love about what you've done with your challenge is you have transmuted everything you've gone through, and it's now your profession, it's your vocation, and you're supporting other women to get on track with their health journeys as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you say was the most pivotal moment from your own health journey that influenced your approach to treating binge eating disorder?
It's interesting. The most pivotal moment that I ever had was only about 10 or 15 years ago, even though I've been doing this for over 35 years, because I was following kind of the formula for treating eating disorders and until then, and I knew there was something missing. But about 10 or 15 years ago, I listened to somebody speak, Dr. Stephen Porges. He's the father of the polyvagal theory, and in a lecture, and it was kind of like the clouds parted. It's like, and I could see clearly for the first time. And it's like, oh, so interesting, because did you know that the cranial nerves that are in and move into our autonomic nervous system are, when we're engaging in eating food, right, we're using the very same neural network when we eat and swallow, this very intimate, activity, essential activity really, of eating food. We're using the very same pathways as we socialize and connect to other people. So what happens when I was talking about how we will attach to food instead of people sometimes. Mm-hmm. So people will have this persona and they might look like they're connecting with with people, but their real intimacy takes place at home or privately with their food, especially somebody that has binge eating disorder. Yeah. They eat very differently at home when they're alone than in front of others. Okay. So they're engaging in this intimate relationship with food. And when I learned that it was just a replacement for, because it was safer, food became a safer outlet for intimacy than conversing with others. Either it was a breach as a child, or a relationship gone bad, or there was some wound of some sort.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be huge, trauma or anything. It just, you just find more safety with food than you do with others. And when I realized that this was similar to, from a neurology perspective, a biology, food was not just an emotional problem. So many people like to label us like, well, they're out of control with food, or it became so much bigger. This is more than emotions. This is biological, neurological. This is a bodily process of calming the nervous system down. And so when I understood that, I knew I had to go in a different direction to decrease the shame of women that felt like they were out of control with food and they were so emotional. Like, I'm an emotional eater. This is a physiological process. And so I wanted to go out and make sure that the shame is reduced, and that, of course, you do this, and let me explain how this works in science, and let's be compassionate toward this. Of course you did this, but this is how you don't have to do this anymore. I'll take your hand. I'll take you on this journey. Let's figure this out. So I guess, you can tell I'm a little fired up over it.
Now, you wrote a book, right? Your memoir is called Food, Body, and Love, but the greatest of these is love. This has resonated with many people. What inspired you to write the book, and what are the key messages that you hope your readers will take away from it?
Yeah. I use that because love to me is the absence of fear. Okay. So the whole book was about how do we move out of a fear orientation into a non-fear orientation or a love orientation.
Yes.
Right? Because I believe that there's no fear in love. Right? So whatever, I mean, there's a spiritual aspect or thread for some people, and others, it's just kind of a universal, right?
Yes.
Kind of like love heals all, right? And if we could just, be kind. And so that's really the message, is how do we move into, because fear is our nemesis. Fear is underneath and behind every one of our dysfunctions.
So true.
If we look at it, fear is what it messes everything up, right? Yeah. We get defensive and protective, and we can use perfectionism, or we can use all kinds of protectors in our life that don't fully allow our authentic self to rise to the occasion. And so if we can tackle fear and live in a more love orientation, then a lot of our problems will start to melt away, including fear. We don't need to fear food. We don't need to fear our bodies. We don't need to be afraid that every, calorie is going to, we don't have to be in that fight, right? Yeah. We can move in a love relationship with our bodies and food.
So in 2023, you launched an online course and a workbook to accompany your memoir. Can you discuss how these resources complement each other and the impact that you've seen them having on individuals struggling with BED?
Right. Well, I actually launched the online course first.
All right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And then others said, we really want this. We want to touch it and feel it. We want to be able to scribble and color. And we, and it's interesting because, you think that everything's turning into more electronic, but people
still want books.
Wanted that workbook. And so it came second. And the workbook actually is much more extensive. But the online course, it's worked really well with it because it's kind of like I can follow you along in the journey. So it's just video of me taking you through meditations, explaining some of the concepts and solutions, helping to process. And then on the online course, I also am interactive with my online participants. So they can turn in they can take pictures of their workbook and upload them, and then I'll give them feedback. And I just love to interact with my with my learners and my clients. And what I've found is people, they feel transformed and empowered. They feel like, you know, I don't have to be afraid anymore of food, right? It's like one participant was saying, I'm kind of indifferent about the cookie.
Mm.
And I love that, because basically it said that, you know, it's like cookies don't freak me out anymore, right? I'm
Yes, yes.
just a little indifferent about them.
So it kind of dispense the fear that people have around certain foods. That is so important.
Yeah.
Wow. This is incredible what you've done. You emphasize the importance of achieving effective, authentic, and abundant lives. What are some of the common barriers people face in reaching these goals, and how do you help them overcome them?
Right. You know, when I think about my own mantra in terms of when I'm making choices, and I make many micro choices all throughout the day. So I think to myself, will this choice bring me, and this especially with food or movement or decisions about, will this choice bring me clarity of mind? Will this choice bring me energy of body? And will this choice bring me self-confidence to execute? And there's so many things that I know that when I make certain choices about whether to get up and walk, or whether to eat a high carb meal versus something that's protein rich in the morning, or all of these decisions either are going to take me closer to that more authentic, effective person, or it's going to take me away, right? And so, I mean, we don't always make the great, you know, the best choice, but if we mostly do. So if we mostly make those choices, we will arrive, the trajectory will take us in that direction. We sometimes don't make that, but we don't have to worry about sometimes, because what we mostly do in our life creates the results of our life, not what we sometimes do. And I'm like this recovering perfectionist. And so many of the women that I work with, it's like if they mess up just a little bit, then they kind of like, well, I already blew it, so I might as well, right? And then they create much more of a problem for themselves than if they would have just said, oh, well, sometimes I, you know, don't do that. And then just get right back on the plan and asking themselves, will this bring me, right? And whatever their mantra is, but that's what brings us toward our effective, authentic life is doing the right thing in these micro moments throughout the day.
Yeah, and it's not about perfection. It's not about getting it 100% correct all the time. And I think that's where we beat ourselves up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what we mostly do. So we got to know our mostly.
I love that. That is really nice. I will not forget that. Now, your approach to wellness is described as intuitive and emotionally engaged. Can you explain how you incorporate intuition into your therapy and coaching sessions?
Well, you know, our nervous system is hardwired. You know that our gut, we have this gut feeling, right?
Yes.
Our gut actually informs our brain in terms of the communication highway between our brain and our gut. Mm-hmm. Our gut actually has 80% of the communication from gut to brain, and only 20% from brain to gut. So there's this gut feeling, right? And intuition. If we're in touch and with the felt experience of our body and our what we call neuroception is always looking out for us. It's like that sixth sense that is kind of like part of our cranial nerves. If we really are in touch with ourselves and in tune with our body will tell us. And that's the intuition, right? The knowing.
Yes.
You know, I have a feeling that this just isn't right? It's kind of like this, But we have to be in touch with that. Or, sometimes we're just kind of, if we don't have clarity of mind and we don't have energy of our body, we're not paying attention. We go offline.
Yeah.
Right. And that's our automated kind of habitual brain. And it's just reacting. So really trying to keep ourselves in a state of clarity so that we can pay attention to what's really kind of going on.
Yes.
That's what I mean by just helping people to find their most intuitive self.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, faith is a significant value for you.
Mm-hmm.
How does your faith intersect with your work as a therapist, author, and coach? And how do you integrate this into your practice with clients?
Well, client comes first, right? It's not my agenda. Okay.
Mm.
So I first have to understand how faith, if at all, resonates with the individuals that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because nothing's more of a turnoff than somebody pushing their own belief system on somebody else. And so from a perspective, even though that I have a Christian faith, I have so many other people with different faith stories. And essentially I look at a macro view of this. So the macro view would be, for me, God is love, and he created us in love, or he, she, whatever, right? Whatever. And so it really is just the essence of, we were meant to be in relationship. We were meant to be lovers of nature. I think that, oftentimes of nature, of people, of, so it's more of that. And so I always make sure that I understand the people that I'm working with, and I work with their orientation. I'm authentic in terms of what mine is, but I'm very respectful of what others' orientation is. So that's how I deal with it. But most counselors or therapists, we're not trained to ask people about their faith orientation. And yet, because it's like, well, that's taboo. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about that. But it's, when it comes to, being authentic, when it comes to, I think spirituality, however it is defined, is necessary, because our brains, and there's been some really fascinating research to show this, our brains are wired to the spiritual. And so finding that taps into a superpower of every individual. You just have to find out what that is.
Now, the last two questions are a bit of a thought experiment. I'm going to teleport you into the past. And we're going to go back and meet that young woman who was struggling with her weight, with her eating disorder. If you could go back and have a conversation with that young woman, based on what life has taught you up until this point, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give her? What would you have wanted somebody to have said to you at that time when you were struggling?
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I would tell her that she's loved, that people love her regardless. They don't love her because she's pretty. They don't love her because she's a great athlete. All the performance, that she was loved before she ever did anything. And so I would try to instill her is that she doesn't have to work so hard at this, that she could just be, and that her essence is something that people will gravitate toward, not her body, not and so it's hard to tell young people this, right? But I think that I needed to hear that that I would not be rejected, that I would be loved regardless of what my body looked like or how hard I worked to be perfect. So I didn't need to be, right? I wish I'd learned the whole mostly and sometimes thing early on in my life. Yeah. I would be kind and compassionate. That don't be afraid of food. That it's a life force. That everything that you put in your body, it fuels you, and your health has to do with the way you think. It has to do with the way that you operate. That food is not
fantastic. Now let's end in the future, and I'm going to teleport you to go and sit and have a conversation with the 90-year-old you.
Okay.
And you're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your family, your dogs, your cats, whoever's with you at the end. If you could teleport into the future and have a conversation with this wise woman who's led you to this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
Thank you for being real. Thank you for opening up and telling people your story. Being brave enough to show the ugliness, the underbelly. I know that there was a lot of risk there, and there was some family or people in your life that were not happy, but you have helped so many people. Thank you for being real. And that was inspiring, because there are people that feel the very same as you did, but they wouldn't have known it if you wouldn't have talked about it.
Fantastic. The other reason why I like to ask that question, Kari, is a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already in us. She's that voice, the intuition you were talking about that guides you. The little whispers when it's time for you to eat or time for you to stop eating. And us just trusting that inner knowing of what your body needs. So thank you so much for coming online and sharing your amazing story with us today. Like I said, this is a passion subject for me, having collapsed with congestive heart failure from hypertension and stress. And now kind of on the road to recovery. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm slowly getting there. So we need to bring more inspiration to more women so they know that it is possible to live a full and healthy life. So I have your website at the bottom of the screen. How else can people reach out to you besides your website?
Well, that's the absolute best way to find me. I wanted to make it simple. So I think that actually is the best. I mean, I have a phone number, people can text me and whatnot, but you can find all that information right on the website. And then you can go to Amazon. I'm an author, just Dr. Kari Anderson, author page, with the books and workbooks that I've written. And that's another way to find me.
Fantastic.
So that would be helpful.
Thank you so much, Kari, and thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is a platform that brings you the voices and stories of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, but most importantly, to empower you with knowledge. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thanks again, Kari.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.